end as well. So here we go. So for anyone who is not able to make it, you'll still have a chock full presentation of information. I do hope it's informative. Feel free to jump in. I did try to make it as interactive as possible because I hate presentations when like the person's just like a random talking head. I have like ADD, so it's like really hard for me to stay focused. So I tried to like keep that in mind. But before I get officially started, I am going to share my screen. Here we go. Ignore my messy desktop when you see it. Don't judge me, por favor. All right. So as you're coming in, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Share your name, your favorite picture book, and what brought you to this workshop. That way I kind of like know where you're at. It helps me a little bit figure out how technical and in the weeds I should get or how not to. So feel free to utilize the chat, put your name, favorite book, and what brought you to this workshop. In terms of picking a favorite book, I know it's torture. Don't hate me. It really depends on the day that you ask me. You can list a couple of your favorites. So no pressure to just like come up with one. It's hard to pick just one. So I get it. And I'm gonna try and see if I can see the chat in here. There we go. Put that there and then here. All right, curious about the process of creating picture books. Perfect. We're going to get really into like talking about structure and characterization and the different types of picture books and formatting and all that good stuff. So definitely going to be learning a lot about that. And yes, think on your favorite. Hi, Sophia. Ooh, Where the Wild Things Are. Yes, that is a classic. Rainbow Fish. That's a fun one. Goodnight Moon, classic. And yeah, awesome. So high schooler, oh my gosh, yay to your college director, giving your college director a big virtual hug for recommending this to you and your favorite book, Rainbow Fish. Okay, we got 2 votes for Rainbow Fish. And we love the Mustache Baby series. I haven't read those. Okay, I am writing that down because I have to go ahead and read those. Oh yes, Adrian. We are besties. I love We Are Water Protectors. Love it. It's not on this shelf, it's in my daughter's room. And she's obsessed with it too. Like my daughter goes to daycare, so we were reading it for like a while. And when kids love a book, they'll just read it over and over and over and over. She basically had the book memorized. And then when she went to daycare, her teacher was just like, what is this that she keeps talking about? Water protectors and ancestors. She's 3 going on 30. And so I had to buy a copy for the daycare because she just kept talking about it. And then they all became obsessed with it. So yes, cool. You are in the right group. My favorite picture book, I'm not gonna pick one, but it really depends on the mood. Sometimes I love stories that make me cry. So I'm a masochist that way. I do like laughing too. So if you like reading picture books that make you laugh, like Ana Siqueira is like hilarious. Her If Your Babysitter Was a Bruja story is hysterical. So yeah, cool. Good stuff. Ooh, One Snowy Day. That's a good one too. You have a subject in mind about your dog and want to know how to begin. Yes, cool. So dog books are super popular. My main tip for you before we get started into the technical stuff, Sylvia, is read as many picture books about dogs as possible, because in this market, you have to make sure it stands out. Okay? So read, 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 read. Ooh, Chinese Cinderella story. That's a good one. I love Eyes That Kiss in the Corners. So great. And I think she just came out with a second one too. I haven't gotten that one, but oh, these are such great see, you guys are great. This is great. This is great. So we're gonna get started. Thank you for sharing. We're gonna talk about how to write picture books. This is kind of like a general agenda. I'm gonna give a little bit more about me, like who's this crazy lady with big hair talking to me. We're gonna do a mindset check. Then we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty of picture books, genre, age range, format, structure, plot structure, character development. We're gonna do some brainstorming exercise too, and I'll share some writing tips. Then I'll share some general writing tips to write a good manuscript. We'll talk a little bit about agenting, and then we'll end with a meditation. Okay. Because so much of writing has to deal with being in the right headspace. So, who am I? Alyssa Reynoso-Morris. I am a wife, a mom, community organizer. I've done some cool stuff like building water purification systems and aquaponic systems in foreign countries. I have done research for the United Nations. I helped them create their, specifically the tribunal in Rwanda, create their witness protection program for victims of the Rwanda genocide. Got to work with microfinance organizations in India. I like helping people, and picture books are an extension of that. I get to help little readers see themselves and their culture on the page, and for other readers to learn about other cultures that aren't their own, to foster empathy, because the world needs more of it. At the core of all of my books is love. So my first book, Plátanos Are Love, is obviously about plátanos, but at its core, it's really about a little girl learning about her ancestors and their resilience, and learning that plátanos are for sharing. And ultimately, she also learns that plátanos are love. And The Bronx Is My Home, which is my second book that comes out this year in October. It's a love letter to the Bronx. And it's kind of like a guidebook where you go to like the Bronx Zoo and Pelham Bay Park and like all these other cool places in the Bronx. But it's ultimately a love letter to the Bronx and to kids from the Bronx, that they know that they can become anything that they want to be. And this is the cover for that one. It's very colorful, very appropriate. And then I have a third book coming out next year, Gloriana Presente, a first day of school book. And that one's like an intergenerational story in which Gloriana has to find her voice in a new school, in a language that she's not very familiar with. And it mirrors her grandmother's journey as an immigrant coming to the US. So it's like those two stories paralleling each other, and how they help each other find their voice. So picture books are my jam. These are the ones I can talk about. There are more coming that I can't talk about. So any questions you have related about picture books during this presentation, ask, use the chat. And if you have any questions after the presentation, feel free to contact me. I'll have my contact information at the end. All right, so now we're going to do a mindset check after I rattled off about who the heck I am. We are going to say these little affirmations to ourselves. So the first one I like to tell myself is I am open to learning new things. So be open to learning new things. Find inspiration everywhere. This one, I borrowed it from Julia Alvarez. She always talks about how she can find inspiration everywhere. And so I try to do that as well. And then this is a biggie. You have a story to tell the story of your heart. Don't worry about the other stuff, the formatting, the editing, the grammatical stuff. You will figure that out. You can all learn that. But the part that's harder to teach is writing the story that only you can tell. You have a unique experience that no one else has. So what is that story? And I tell myself this one as well. You are enough, no matter what others say. You are a writer, so keep at it no matter what. All right. So how are our brains feeling? Are we feeling confident? Are we learning new things? Yes. All right. Oh yeah, I like that answer. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. Wonderful. All right. I love this group. So interactive. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to try to put this down here. Yep, that's better. Okay, picture books 101. We're going to talk about genres, age group. So the easiest way to categorize them, they usually fall under fiction, nonfiction. The fiction usually falls under two other branches of either a plot or character-driven story, or more like a concept book. My book, Plátanos Are Love, as well as this book, The Bronx Is My Home, technically falls under a concept book because there's not really a challenge that the protagonist needs to overcome. Instead, it's showing you the concept of plátanos and the different ways that plátanos are important to the main character. Same thing with like concept books. Often you might see them in terms of like other like cultural introductions that don't necessarily have a central plot that the character needs to overcome. But even if there isn't a plot per se, there does need to be like a beginning, middle, and end, and the character still needs to have changed and learned something along the way, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Then we have some nonfiction, which is usually falls into, especially for picture books, biographies. Biographies are popping these days. I think as parents are trying to introduce their kids, and teachers are trying to introduce their students to like cool people doing cool things, biographies have been doing really well. They are still harder to sell, but if you can figure out how to tell a biography story in like a really satisfying plot driven way, then you're good to go. Typically the age group for picture books is that 4 to 8 age range, and as readers usually read like up, the main character is usually in that like 5 to 9, maybe 5 to 10 years old. Typically readers want to know what to expect, so the main characters are a little bit older than the target audience, so that they know like, oh, this is what a first day of school is, oh, this is what to look forward to. And here is where we get interactive. What do you think board books are, and what do you think novelty books are? We talked about picture books, and picture books are that 4 to 8 range. So what do we think board books and novelty books are? Feel free to utilize the chat, or if you want, and take yourself off mute, as long as we're respectful, I'm game. You can take yourself off mute. Board books 0 to 2, that's a good guess. Board books are really little. Yep. Toddler range, yes. Novelty are for teens, okay. Toddlers, all right. So these are good guesses. So what makes a board book is, I'm not sure if you guys remember, it's like they're literally made out of like that cardboard material. They're really short, maybe anywhere between like 5 to 10, maybe a little bit more spreads. This is during that age, that like 0 to 4 age, when they're like, kids are always putting everything in their mouth. Yeah. So you don't want to hand them one of these. They're going to destroy it. So board books are typically that like 0 to 4, so they can get familiar with a book, how to turn the pages without giving us a heart attack when they accidentally destroy it, right? What separates board books and novelty books is that novelty books are the ones that have like glitter, or they have like texture. They might have like a mirror in there, or one of my daughter's favorite novelty books is about this cat, and it's like it's something like, that's not my cat. And so it goes through the spreads like, that's not my cat, his paws are too rough. And so the paws are, you can touch them, they're kinesthetic, and you can feel that they're rough. And oh, that's not my cat, his nose is too smooth. So engaging those other senses typically are those novelty books. So most novelty books are board books, but not all board books are novelty books. So I will not be talking about board books here. I will not be talking about novelty books here. But in case you were curious as to what those books are, they are not the same as picture books. Picture books are for that 4 to 8 range. Okay? Cool beans. Okay. Now we're going to get technical. So typically for a picture book, for fiction, they hover at around that 300 to 600 word count. It depends on your topic. It depends on your writing style, but brevity is the name of the game when it comes to picture books. Making it as concise as possible is super, super, super important. For nonfiction, you can get away with around 1,000 words. So those biographies and more like informational stories, you can get away with about 1,000 words. But even still, I have seen a trend in nonfiction biographies and nonfiction books being closer to the 800 range. It ultimately depends on the publisher. But what I will say, for those who are interested in traditionally publishing a picture book, agents tend to be more picky with word count. Your editor might not be as picky once you have an editor. Based on my experience and based on what I have heard from other authors, when they were querying agents, it was really important to be as concise as possible. When it got into the hands of an editor, sometimes the editor might say, oh, can we add a little bit here? Something feels like it's missing here. The editors care more that the story is told in full and completely. Agent wants to make sure, because they get so many, like hundreds of queries. If they see that your picture book manuscript is 2,000 words, they're automatically like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They haven't done their research, and they might not even read the submission. It just all depends on the agent. So something to bear in mind if you're trying to traditionally publish a picture book. The most important part is that you're not compromising on the story, but as you're revising, try to make it as brief as possible. Keep all your old revisions, and some of that stuff from the old revisions might reappear, but especially when you're querying agents, you want to keep it as short as possible. So that's in terms of words. Now we're going to talk about those pages. Usually a picture book, the most common is 32 pages long. Sometimes they might be 24, sometimes they might be 40. Very, very rarely they're 40, 48. It just depends on the narrative. But again, especially as you're starting off, it's good to get into the practice of trying to keep it to that 32 page, because it's a lot harder to explain to an editor or an agent why on your first picture book you're breaking all the rules, right? Something to think about is, as a natural rule breaker myself, if you're going to break the rules, you can't break them all at once. You have to be strategic as to which rules you're breaking. And this was one rule that I was like, you know what, let me keep it at 32 and then we'll reevaluate. And that's what happened. For my first book, Plátanos Are Love, that one's 32 pages. For my second book, this one's actually 40 pages. And that was a decision that my editor and I decided on together. So try to aim for that 32 pages. And sorry to break it to you guys, it's not a full 32 pages that you actually get to write on. Your manuscript doesn't actually officially start until page 4. So even though it's 32 pages, it's not actually 32 pages. Because you have like the copyright and the dedication page, you have the half title page. So really, you have between that page 4, that 4th spread, up until 31, maybe 32, depending upon your publisher. Any questions about that? I know that was like really technical, but I like to get that stuff out of the way before we do the fun stuff, because I can't tell you how many times people send me manuscripts and they're like, page 1, and I'm like, I am sorry, but no. Good. How can Amazon say, yes, it's 40 pages? That's a really good question. So the reason why it says 40 pages is because when you actually take into account like the glued on spreads, like this one, this glued on one, and then once we added the actual recipes, it technically was 40 pages. But in terms of the story, it's 32 pages. Excellent question. No, thank you. So when I was submitting to my agent, to my agent and then to my editor, it was 32 pages, but then we decided to incorporate the glossary, which doesn't count toward your word count, but it does count toward your page count. So when we decided to include the glossary and the recipes at the end, it did make the book 40 pages. But in terms of the actual like text, it's 32. All right, good question. Okay, so here we go. This is the fun part. I'm sure some of this might be a refresher for some of you from like, writing classes, English classes. So this should be a good little refresher. Good picture books, just like any other genre, whether that be middle grade or YA or adult, should have some form of plot. Those plot-driven stories are important. Even concept books have a little bit of some plot in there. And what makes for a compelling story arc is that your character needs to change. They need to learn something by the end of the story. Maybe they need to, keeping picture books in mind, maybe they need to learn how to share. Maybe they are struggling with grappling with the idea of moving away to a new place, or they're struggling and anxious about a first day of school, or maybe they're scared of making new friends, or oh no, maybe they're having a sibling and they're not the only kid anymore, right? Those kinds of things. By the end of the narrative, your character needs to have changed or learn something by the end. Otherwise, like, what's the point of the story, right? And it's important that your character wants something and is like struggling to get it. That is the easiest way to kind of sum up plot. They are trying to move forward, they're trying to get something, but there are things getting in their way. And it is through the trying and failing that we learn to empathize with our character, and then we're rooting for them at the end, and then at the end they finally do the thing and everyone's just like, wow. Same thing for picture books. Obviously it's a much shorter journey to get there, but it's there. The other main characteristic of picture books is that it should be written from like a child like perspective. Oftentimes, either the narrator or the main character is a child themselves, but not always. There's a book right now that my daughter is obsessed with, and it's like The Day the Crayon Saved the Rainbow. There are no kids in the story. 0. It's about some crayons that saved the rainbow after the sun and the clouds got into a tussle. They were mad at each other. They were beefing. They're like, we're not friends no more. And then all the rainbows disappeared. And all these crayons are like, what? So they bring the rainbows back. No kids. But it is clearly written from a childlike perspective. Though I do think if rainbows disappeared, adults will have a problem with it too. But for the sake of kids' books, I mean, kids are obsessed with rainbows. It makes sense. Crayons, this is a thing that kids are constantly interacting with. It works, right? There's another book, I'm forgetting the full name of it, but it's like Amos's Sick Day or something. He's a zookeeper, and Amos is not a child. He's an adult, an older adult, but he's very childlike in his mannerisms, so it still works. So just keep that in mind. If your book is about an object like a crayon, or maybe it's about an animal books are very popular with kids. They need to be childlike. Does that make sense? All right, so let's use the chat, or feel free to take yourself off mute, because the other question I'm going to ask is, what do you think agency means? So when I wrote on my presentation, childlike character needs to have agency and move the story forward themselves, what do you guys think I mean by that? Ooh, yes. These answers are coming in hot. You guys are great. Yes, make choices on their own and solve their problem. Very good. Autonomy. Yep. Being able to do something on their own. Very important. Independence. Yep. Independent. Very good. You guys did it. To solve their own problem, they can do it on their own. That is exactly what I mean. And why do I put so much emphasis on this? The reason is because, myself included, every author that I have ever come across that has written picture books, in their first drafts, there's a helicopter parent in there doing the most. There is a teacher that needs to just take a step back. There's an abuela that's just, no. So it's a really easy trap unconsciously for us to write picture books in which there's like a friend or a family member that's overly helpful. And I think part of it is a cultural thing in our society. You know, we need to make sure that when we are writing picture books for young readers, that we know they have the autonomy, they are smart, they are capable of solving their problems on their own. And sometimes as adults, we're so used to solving the problems for the young people in our life, and that unconsciously trickles into our writing. So it's super important that we do not do that in our picture books. Our child reader needs to be able to solve the problem on their own. They need to be the ones moving the story forward. Yes, they can get some help. Help is fine from friends and family, but they need to be the ones making the choices. They need to be the ones doing the things and failing and picking themselves back up and trying it again, and then probably failing again until they finally are able to do the thing. So avoid that trap. Make sure you keep that front of mind as you start your picture books. And then the other thing I like to suggest is to play around with the setting and how it affects the character and the plot. While unless you're an author illustrator, and I am not, but author illustrators are amazing. Unless you are that, the setting it's always interesting trying to write about the setting without writing about the setting, because when you are writing picture books, when you have to be so brief, you can describe the setting a little bit here and there, but you really want to try and rely on using your other senses more, because the illustrator is going to fill in a lot of those gaps. So another thing to think about when writing picture books that's a little bit different from novel writing. When you're writing a novel, you want all the details in there, not picture books. Just enough detail that's critical for the narrative to move it forward, or that maybe is adding to like the lyrical style of it, but not too much. Cool? Awesome sauce. Okay. So here is your formula. I use this every time before I'm getting ready to start writing a picture book to make sure that I have the most like important components in there, and then I flesh it out. So this is my outline. And I always start with what my main character wants. What does my main character want? And then you think about the obstacles that are getting in their way. And so they try and they try and they try again. You might hear this rule of 3. That's like picture book talk for those 3 times that they try and fail, try and fail, try and fail. All hope is lost. Oh, woe is me. Right? And then finally, they have a brilliant idea and it works and everyone is celebrating. This is great for outlining your picture book, because again, it has to be very brief. So it's easy to fill it up with some other stuff that you don't need as you're writing and as you're revising. Coming back to this can help you strip out some of that extra stuff that you might not need. So think about your main character, think about what they want, and what are some natural or unnatural obstacles that get in the way. What do they try and why doesn't it work? And then what do they try again until it finally works? Okay, any questions about the plot structure? Cool. All right. Looks like we're okay. And then here are some questions that I like to ask myself when I'm trying to think of a character, especially to make my characters distinct from each other. So I have a little like mini interview that I do with my character. And, I asked them like, what's your name? How did you come to get that name? What are you obsessed with? What are things you're interested in? Where did you grow up? How did that influence who you are becoming, who you are now? What are your favorite foods? And what are your least favorite? And even though not all of this actually makes its way into the manuscript, it can help you figure out that distinct voice that makes your character so unique and stand out, because there are a lot of books already out there, and their picture books are a really, really hard sell. So you have to figure out what will make your story so unique. So that was like my little characterization exercise. But before that, we're actually going to do a brainstorming topic. I know some of you have a topic already. That is fine, well and good. I'm looking forward to reading your story about your dog. But for those of us who don't have an idea, it is really important to brainstorm, write them all down, store them away, and hoard them away somewhere. Because when it comes to picture books, if you want to go the traditional route, something important to know is that before you query an agent, you need to have at least 3 polished manuscripts done. If you're querying novels, they don't have that expectation for you to have 3 full novels complete. But the expectation for picture books, if that is the only genre you are writing in at the time, is that you write at least 3 polished manuscripts. When you are querying an agent, you only send them the one, but if an agent likes it, then they're going to ask for more. And you don't want to be that person that's like, oh, that's the only story I wrote. Yikes. So it's important to have a lot of ideas. So we're going to take a minute and we're going to tackle the first prompt, which is, what are you passionate about? I'm going to give everyone a minute and I want you to write down what you are passionate about. What is something you would consider yourself an expert in? Or what is something that you want to learn more about, that you are interested in doing a deep dive about? And then the next step is to try to think about how to make that interesting for a child, how that might appeal to a child. All right. 1 minute. Twenty seconds. Time is up. Okay. So who wants to be brave and share what they wrote down? Feel free to pop it in the chat or take yourself off mute and feel free to share that way.
So I'm gonna be brave.
Yeah,
I'm
be
a high
brave.
schooler. So some of the things that I wrote down were, well, I like to sew and I like to doodle a lot and I like to bake and I've been trying to get into gardening. It just seems fun.
Mhm.
Um, Idea to make it interesting to children of sorts, which my baking idea was that, a child wants to bake a cake for their tired mom or tired parent and messes up, but it's kind of cute and fun and they like feel like they've messed up for like their birthday or present. And then at the end, they get a hug from their parent being like, you tried your best and I still love it. You know what I mean?
I love
Um,
it.
yeah.
That is perfect. You have a whole plot arc right there too. Like, not only did you give me a topic, but you gave me your whole story arc. You told me what they wanted. You told me, the obstacle is that they're young and they're trying to do it by themselves and they're struggling. And then the satisfying ending that their parent still loves them. That is wonderful, beautiful. I highly recommend that you read, forget the full title, but she is also a musa. I think Adriana. Abuelita and I Make Flan. So definitely read Abuelita and I Make Flan by Adriana Hernandez Bergstorm. I'm gonna pop it in the chat for you so you can have that as a reference. Okay, who else wants to be brave while I pop this in the chat?
I can go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. We're ready.
Charlene, go ahead. I think you got off mute. Go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thanks for this session. Y'all are so generous to do it. Please forgive me because I'm in transit. I'm being safe. Y'all are on the Bluetooth.
It's all good.
The idea is inspired by my first child. When they were really little, we used to make pancakes together. And so I thought it would be really nice to share about a little person cooking in the kitchen and making pancakes. But the pancakes get to be magic pancakes, and it's playful, and they can make them any color that they want. And then sharing a recipe for our family's zucchini pancakes in the back.
I love that. Love it, love it, love it. Especially like sprinkling in magic. Kids love that. You know, this is during a time when they have imaginary friends. I mean, I still think I have an imaginary friend. This is that like magical time. Anything is possible. So tapping into that inner child and putting that on the page is always going to be a win. So yes, yes, yes. I love that, love that, love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I need to see a draft of that. That's your homework. Once you're not on the road, of course. All right. And then we're going to do another. Sorry about that. I cut you off.
I was getting very excited in my car. Like, there's definitely a draft. It exists. So that's so exciting that it's interesting to you. Thank you.
Yes, definitely, especially books with recipes at the end. Kids love that. It's a nice activity for, you know, the parents to do afterward. It allows for the learning to continue even after the book has been read. My homework to you is going to be to read as many books as possible that talk about food. So I would also recommend that you read Abuelita and I Make Flan. I recommend Freedom Soup by Tammy Charles. I recommend Fry Bread by
we love Freedom Soup and fried bread. Oh my
there
goodness.
you go. Awesome. So you're doing your homework already. Whenever you want to write, whatever it is that you want to write about, you need to read. My recommendation is at least 25 books about that same topic to see like what works in their narrative, what makes their story unique, and then it helps you position your story and what makes your story unique. So those are questions to ask yourself during the revision process. When you're first writing, just write it unfiltered. Nothing is wrong. Everything is perfect. As you're revising, that's when you need to be a little bit more critical and ask yourself, what makes this different from what already exists? How can I put my unique spin on it? All right. All right. And so we're going to do one more of these. We're going to do the second prompt, which is, can you remember any embarrassing moments or challenges from when you were a child where you had to overcome something? So don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to share this one. So you can let go. You can write down your most embarrassing thing. I'm going to put a minute on the clock. Don't worry, you don't have to share this one. I'm not that cruel. Twenty seconds. Time is up. Okay. So again, I'm not going to make you share this one, but tapping into those embarrassing moments is great, especially if you can be funny. Ana Siqueira is hilarious with her manuscripts. I highly recommend her books. And she does explore like embarrassing moments and just like interesting concepts. Another thing to think about is just like think of what are things that are important to children. It helps to, like, I have a kid and I've literally like nannied almost my entire life, so it is helpful for me to know like kids are interested in animals and things like that. So trying to tap into that child version of you and what kids are interested in helps. As I mentioned before, reading picture books is a great way to get more inspiration and also like to help position your manuscript as unique. And then another great resource that I want to recommend to everyone is Tara Lazar's Story Storm Challenge. I'm pretty sure she does it in January. She works like through her blog, she works with other incredibly accomplished authors, like award-winning authors, and they each write a blog with different ideas to help you like brainstorm different picture book topics. And they share like their process and fun stuff like that. And usually by the end of the challenge, you have at least 31 new ideas, new shiny ideas. Then your new problem becomes, which one do I work on first? Which is what February is about, right? Like February is like when my ADD really kicks in, and then I'm just like, oh, and then I start one, and then I start another, and then I start too many, and then so, but one problem at a time, you know. Do the challenge. It's fun. It's a great exercise, and then it also is good to have too many ideas, because sometimes you'll write a story and it feels really good, and then all of a sudden you'll get stuck. So it's nice to have something else to work on. Give that one manuscript some time to breathe, some time to just give it some distance, and then you can be more objective about it when you come back. I know I've done that sometimes. When you're like in the weeds with it, you get so attached to it, and then it gets hard to be critical of it. But if you give yourself some space, you tuck it in a drawer or put it away, work on something else nice and shiny, and then you can come back to it and be like, oh, what the heck was I thinking, you know? And then that's when you actually make it better. So definitely recommend Tara Lazar's Story Storm Challenge. All right, so we have our ideas. Here are just some general writing tips. Some of this should sound kind of like a refresher, but just things to think about when you're writing picture books. It's super important to lean into your other senses. So remember, your illustrator is going to be lifting a heavy load of having the illustrations done. So you don't have to describe every single thing. You don't have to describe what your character's wearing unless it's pertinent to the story. You don't have to describe what color her pancakes are, you know, that kind of stuff. Because the illustrator is going to help, unless it's part of the story. Maybe those pancakes are like green and they don't like the color green, you know. So definitely lean into hearing. So dialogue is a great tool in picture books. Touch, smell is a great one as well. You're bringing your reader in to the story by engaging the other senses without overstimulating them with the visual, because the illustrations are going to be there to supplement. Some other fun literary techniques are, you know, onomatopoeia. Kids love onomatopoeia. Some of the kids' favorite part when I'm reading my book is like the onomatopoeia part. I have them repeat after me. So there's a part where they like chop the plátanos. So we go chop chop, and then I have them do chop chop with me, and then they all go like chop 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 chop. It's really adorable to have 20 kids saying chop 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 over and over again. And it brings the room to life, because the other thing to keep in mind with picture books is that they are meant to be read out loud. So as you are writing and revising, how does it sound when it's said out loud? Does it have a fun rhythm to it? Does it have like a sing-songy nature to it? Is it lyrical? And adding some of those literary techniques can help with that flow. Metaphors, similes, all those fun literary techniques that you learn in English class, dust those off and figure out which ones make the most sense for your story, which ones lend themselves the best to your narrative. The other thing, those themes, super important. That is what can help make your story stand out. So themes around family, belonging, maybe there's a new family member, writing about those wacky family members, that crazy titi or that funny uncle, dealing with emotions. That's a biggie for kids. Facing fears, imagination, those types of themes that are things that kids are dealing with, can really help make your manuscript stand out. I see some questions in here. Do you know of any picture books that deal with being afraid of bugs? I don't know any off the top of my head, but that is a very real fear that even adults can probably relate to, so that would be good. The other challenge of writing picture books is that you have to keep your young reader front of mind as you're writing it, but you do have to keep, the teachers, the librarians in mind as well, because they're the ones that are going to be probably reading the book to the child. They are also the gatekeeper that buys the book for the child. So that's when you have to be extra creative, because a book about being afraid of bugs is going to resonate for kids, and it will probably resonate with the adult, and it will have a longer shelf life because adults are the ones engaging in that transaction of actually buying the book. So in cases like that, your library is your best asset. Your librarians, your local librarians are your best friends. I'm currently working on a manuscript about going on a hike. There's a lot of nature books out there. There's a lot of hiking books out there. So I've just been reading tons of them to make sure that my story stands out from what already is out there. So yes, go to your library. Is it good to write in a way that the reader can imagine the accent from the person? Oh, this is a good question. So there's not a right or wrong answer to this. I've seen it done in which the accent is there. I've seen it done in which the accent is not. It really depends on your style. Is that part of your literary voice? It can help to show the difference in voice. So when you're writing a book, actually, Plátanos Are Love, I'll use it as an example. When I was writing it, one of the best tips that I got from a writer mentor was to read just the dialogue and like print it out, read out just the dialogue, cut it out in little pieces, little strips, and pick it out and see, can I guess who is speaking based on what is being said? Because especially if you have like adults in your story, you want to make sure that the adult and the child sound distinct from each other. So it really depends on your own personal preference. The main thing is do what feels right and do what is the most authentic. Because sometimes the other issue that you might face with accents is if you're not from that cultural background, writing in a voice or in an accent that isn't one you're familiar with can be inauthentic. So just be cognizant of that. And then one more question. Yeah, so the themes for Plátanos, definitely food, definitely family, definitely tradition. Some other themes are around like love. Love is a theme. Another theme is like ancestors and the concept of like passing down recipes from generation to generation. And in Plátanos, some of the challenges with passing down those recipes is hit on. So yes, good question. It's really important for picture books, even though they're short, to be layered. One theme is usually these days is not going to cut it. You gotta layer that puppy on. All right. Yeah, anytime. I'm glad this is helpful. And if you have any questions after the presentation, please reach out. I know we're getting close to that 1 hour time frame. I still have a couple more fun tips to share. So you can stay on if you're able. If not, I completely understand. I'll go through these quickly though. Some other just general writing tips, no matter what age you're writing for. Read a lot, write a lot. And then a tip that an author friend shared with me is that 90% of writing is rewriting. And that cannot be more accurate. So it's super important to, number 5, have good critique partners, join those critique groups so that people can give you feedback on your manuscript, because it's really hard to critique your own work. It's just hard to be critical. In terms of having a strong voice, that's what editors gravitate toward. They will help you with the grammar stuff. They will help you with the other stuff, but they can't help you with a strong voice. And the only way for you to write with a strong voice is if you're writing the story from your heart that only you can tell. So that's the most important part. Focus more on what are the stories that only you can tell. And then you can add in all those literary techniques. Then you can read more stories to make sure that it stands out and all that stuff. But at its core, it needs to be a story that only you can write. And then I also recommend some resources like SCBWI, the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, Highlights Foundation. They have great courses, both virtual and in person. The Children's Book Academy, a great book on craft is writing picture books. So if you're not able to take some courses, this is a $20 investment. Writing picture books by Anne Whitford Paul is a great way to start. And the Authors Guild also has some great resources, not just on craft, but also like traditional publishing, self-publishing. They talk a lot about like the industry aspect of writing. So definitely check those out. And then also authors like myself offer paid critique services. So as you're writing and rewriting and you just need a new pair of eyes, there are a lot of authors that offer those services, and then you get advice from an actual industry professional, which can be very helpful. A little bit about agents. Agents are super important. The reason why it is good to have an agent is because if you want to be traditionally published, most publishing houses will not accept your manuscript unless it comes from an agent. So make sure that your manuscript is polished and that you have a good query letter. A query letter, before I talk too much about that, feel free to tell me in the chat if you know what a query letter is. And if you don't know, just say don't know. Yes, okay, this is good. So what I like, this is a great metaphor. I like to say that your manuscript is like your resume, and the query letter is like the cover letter. So your manuscript doesn't really change. When you're applying for jobs, your resume doesn't really change, but that cover letter does change, or at least it should. Your cover letter needs to be customized. So if you're sending the same letter to every single agent, you're not going to get an agent, point, period, dot. It needs to be customized to that agent. And it can be very simple. It can be something along the lines of, Here we go. I choose to submit to you because of your wonderful blah, blah, blah. This is like a really like standard one. What got me my agent is I read their manuscript wish lists and I saw that they were looking for intergenerational stories, which my story is an intergenerational story written from a diverse perspective, If you read their manuscript wish list, and you can do that through their website, you can find agents using Query Tracker. I have it here, Query Tracker. SCBWI also has information on agents. That is what's going to be your best bet. So when it comes to an agent, they're important. One, they are the reason why you're able to submit to traditionally published agents. Two, they can help you negotiate your contract. So those are the main reasons why you need an agent. How do you get one? With a good customized query letter. That is the main takeaway. Good customized query letter. And you can find agents using Query Tracker. All right. Any questions? I know that was a lot before we jump into the meditation. And again, I will share my contact information at the end. So if you don't have questions now, no pressure. Please stay in touch. Yes, I will. We are recording and you will get a copy of the presentation as well. So there were a couple slides that I flipped through a little quickly about agenting. You can go back through those, see what like the template looks like. Yes. Whoop, whoop. I love getting slides too. Yes, of course. All right, cool. So now we're going to do our meditation because this is a lot of information and hopefully you are leaving informed and inspired. But if you are also feeling a little overwhelmed, that is okay. So we're going to do a meditation and you can feel free to repeat after me. The first one is, I have a story to tell. My story is important and worthy of being told. I write stories from my heart. So I'm going to give you a second to say that to yourself. All right, our second meditation is, I am open to learning new things. I will learn how to edit. I will learn about the kidlit industry. I will learn to find inspiration everywhere. And my favorite, I am enough. I am a writer. I will keep writing no matter what. I am enough. I am a writer. I will keep writing no matter what. All right, I hope you all feel good. You feel like you are enough because you are. And this is how you can contact me. I'll pop it in the chat as well, so you can click on it. Yes, all the tears. This is why I like books that make me cry, right? Yes, and we still need to do the drawing, so please hang out while I pop in here. My pleasure, my pleasure. This is how you can contact me. AlyssaAuthor.com. Please, if you can, request my book from your local library, read it, and write those reviews. Yes, those positive affirmations are super important. Publishing is an industry riddled in rejection. You meet a lot of great people in it, especially in the kidlit space, but the struggle is real. So you need to have that mental fortitude to go into it. So feel free, contact me if you have any questions. I do manuscript critiques if you needed another pair of eyes on your manuscript. Please request my book at your library, read it, review it. If your library doesn't carry it, just be like, hey, you need to carry this book. And that will be greatly appreciated.
Ooh, that was amazing, Alyssa. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, no, this is great. And thank you for those of you that still hung on. A few of you had to go and I still put your name in the drawing. So I'm going to share really quickly this goofy wheel of names thing. So let's just do
I
it.
love it.
Okay. Adrian, yay!
Congratulations, Adrian.
You get.
I love that it does the little like.
I know, it's so funny. And then we got two more. So let's do it. Ah, Ryan, yay!
All right, and one more.
One more. Oh, Adrian, you're on fire.
And again. All right, I'll do it again.
All right, let's do it again. Go play the lottery, Adrian.
You're lucky.
Oh, okay.
Sophia.
Yay. Okay. So you can either just send me your address in the chat, like directly to me, or just email the address to me in the email at the info at untoldnarratives.com, and you'll get a copy of the book. Very, very excited.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. You all were wonderful, very engaged, and had some really great answers. So you made this easy.
Yay, and thank you again, Alyssa. We so appreciate it. And I can't wait to send out the books, and I will ask everyone to order it, and I'll make sure the library has it. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, I put my website in the chat. I'll put it in one more time before you all head out. If you need anything, you have any questions, I mean it, reach out to me. I might not be able to respond like that day. I am currently still on tour, so I still have some more other events coming up in the works, but I will get back to you. So
thank you for that. That's very generous and kind. Appreciate it. Let's make sure that you all have a copy of the presentation and the recording. So, and thank you for letting us record.
of course.
Awesome. It's going to be an amazing addition to the library.
Yay.
Yes. All right.
Good rest of your day, everyone. You all rock. You can do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I got just grabbing folks' addresses before I go.
Yeah, I think they sent it directly to you.
Yes. So I got one. Oh, I didn't get Sophia. She might send it to me.
After. Yeah, it was Adrian, Sophia, and Ryan.
Yeah. Ryan was the one I got. So then I'll just make sure. Adrian, I know, so I can reach out. And so Sophia, I'll make sure to reach out over email. So
Perfect.
Awesome. This was so amazing.
Thank you. And you can stop recording probably.
Oh, I probably can, yeah.